Guys, hello. Welcome to another Bleacher Report football stream in the app on YouTube. We are living on multiple platforms these days, guys. So no matter where you are, thank you for tuning in. Look, it's not end of term yet, I guess you would say, but we do have some report cards, some grades to hand out today. There was a lot of money spent in the summer. Did everyone spend it well? That's what we're going to go over. Some teams spent over 400 million euros, my friend. Will that team be on this list? Of course they will be. Of course they will be. But how have those signings sort of panned out for them? That's what we're grading today. What kind of value have they gotten out of those signings? Did they cover their weak spots very well? A's, B's, L's. No, we're not actually handing out L's, but just standard grading system. I don't think they hand out L's to kids in school. Maybe they do now. I don't know. It's 2025, but you know what we're doing. I want to hear from you guys as well. If you're in the chat, what grade you're giving each team, and tell me why as well. I don't need like a long essay, just a reason or two. And I promise you, I'm going to stop with the school stuff now. It's over. School stuff will not live past the intro, besides the grading, of course. So don't worry, it won't come up. I'm not going to be making all sorts of puns or anything like that. Let's get into it. Let's start with our first team. That is Liverpool. Now, their previous grade in the past, their previous grade was an A plus, and I can understand, right? If we're looking at the beginning of September still, A plus, that's a grade that I would give them as well with the window that they had. Right now, though, I'm giving them a C plus. They addressed most of the areas of the pitch that needed to be addressed, except for the center back position, which was a huge, huge mistake. Just bringing in one guy who's now injured, unfortunately. We've seen how much Konate has struggled this season. Even Virgil van Dijk isn't playing like himself. They really needed to get Mark Guéhi over the line or someone else. Mark Guéhi was the one they chose. That's who they went for. It didn't end up happening in the end. That kind of screwed them a little bit. Maybe they should have had a backup as well. We've even seen Virgil van Dijk not really looking like himself. That was a big error that you could sort of see coming a mile away, not getting a center back in. So I don't think so. Maybe A plus wasn't deserved there. Maybe just an A, if we're being real. But if you look at the rest of the signings, I mean, I get the hype, man. I was on that hype as well. All of the signings except for one, however, have not performed. Ekitike is the only one that has shown some value here so far. Alex Isak, absolute bust so far, especially now that he's out injured. Not a lot of value there from the most expensive Premier League signing of all time. Kerkez hasn't been good at all. Clear that Van Dijk doesn't rate him or trust him. The amount of times that Van Dijk has shown his displeasure with Kerkez is actually kind of crazy. I honestly find Van Dijk needs to chill with that a little bit. I don't love how he's kind of embarrassed the guy, even though he has been poor. Frimpong has been barely played due to two injuries already. Speaking of Leone, who we mentioned earlier, out for a long time, unfortunately. Haven't got a lot of value out of there. Florian Wirtz, big money transfer, and all he has managed to supply is 2 assists against Frankfurt, a team that has conceded 28 goals in 10 matches. So not doing well. At least Ekitike is Liverpool's top scorer. He's providing the most value out of anyone and keeps them up at a C plus. I almost said at C. So let's see what you guys have to say about that. Jay Payton says Arsenal A plus or B plus. Sorry, Victor has been underwhelming. We're going to talk about them in a second. We got a lot of Arsenal talk here. P Murphy from the app as well saying Arsenal A plus, top of the league. Okay. And Chronicle says Konaruma has been a top tier signing. Look, we've had some Arsenal talk already. I think we're going to get into them, but Junior or JR, sorry, has said C plus way too high for Liverpool. C minus or D plus would be more fitting. Yeah, and like I said, JR, I think that would be a little bit harsh just for what Ekitike has provided as far as the goals that he has brought, the assists that he has brought. He's looked very good throughout most of his time at Liverpool thus far. That's the one that's sort of bringing them up. The rest, though, look, maybe I'm a very generous teacher here. I know I said I'd stop with the school stuff, but it had to come out. All right, let's move on to Arsenal because there's a lot of Arsenal opinions here. And their previous grade was an A plus. Now, That would imply that their window was pretty much perfect. And maybe that will be a philosophical disagreement for some people, right, who don't believe in perfection. However, I can understand why that A plus was given to them previously. We're going to stick with it. Arsenal, they did it all, man. They have given Arteta everything he needs. They've added to an already strong squad. They brought in players that add depth. They brought in starting strikers and attackers and midfielders. Their squad has been improved in every single department. Massive, massive signings. But the one thing I do agree, Victor Gyökeres has not been firing in the big matches. Yes, he scored against Atleti, but both of those goals, I mean, that guy was reluctant to do his iconic celebration. If you're not going to pull out your celebration, you know that you aren't really proud of the goals that you scored in that one. A blocked dribbler of a goal and one that he scored with his groin. So I do need to see more out of Victor Gyökeres just in the day to day. I do need to see more out of him when Arsenal are playing against top opposition. Atleti have one win away from home this season, so they're not good on the road. So I'm not saying he's been a bad signing necessarily, don't get it twisted, but he hasn't provided the value I think some people expected from him. However, he is still contributing to the play. He is making room for his teammates. Everything is working for Arsenal as things go. So the rest of Arsenal's window was fantastic. For me, the best window out of all the teams that have spoken about here, or we will speak about here. They get to add the, best window title to their cabinet. But after years of spending, it felt like this is the summer where Arsenal kind of looked around at the rest of the league. They looked around at the Champions League and they thought to themselves, okay, now we can strike. Now is your time to show out, Arteta. You've had years of spending, tons, culminating in spending a ton this summer. And so far, they're looking pretty good value. It's a plan coming together. It's careful planning throughout the years. So well done to Arsenal. That's an A. Adding to their, or A plus, sorry, adding to what was already a very good squad to give them the best chance at winning. Now, um, Jay Payton says, I'm an Arsenal fan and he's just not being used right. Look, I'm a Benfica supporter and I've seen him play a ton in Portugal and it is different. It is different. Amorim's system is completely different to what Arteta wants to do. He was used to having much, much more space to run into. When he goes out of matches, he ghosts. So he needs to be involved much, much more. But let's move on. Let's move on. Man United is our next team, and they previously got a B minus. A team on the up, maybe. I'm going to upgrade them a little bit, just a little bit. I'm going to give them an A minus. I had my doubts about Seshko. I did. 2 goals in 4-ish starts is not too bad in the Premier League. I still find he goes anonymous somewhat, but that's just me. And he has been contributing otherwise. Brian Mbeumo is up for Player of the Month in October, a month where Man United won every Premier League match, which is unbelievable to be able to say that. Sunderland, Liverpool, and Brighton, all victims of Manchester United. Cunha has been good in performance, but only had his first goal contribution this past weekend, right? Again, his overall play was solid. So when he starts adding more goal contributions in there, he'll be a great signing. And then there's Senny Lamens in goal. I mean, what can you say about him, right? Made some great saves so far. Fantastic start. You add in a keeper that isn't erratic, a keeper that the backline trusts and believes in, and just look at the differences in performance across the board in defense. It is funny, as you see on the screen there, Matheus Cunha, 8 matches, 1 goal. Doesn't look good, but as I said, once he starts adding those goal contributions to his performances, you'll be looking at him very, very differently. So they completely changed their attack with Seshko and Mbeumo and Cunha. They addressed the massive goalkeeping issue. They also brought in, what's his name, Diego Leon, who we haven't really seen, but hey, maybe one for the future. Now, there is a lot of talk about their midfield needing a signing. I'm not as adamant about that. I think that they addressed the areas that they needed to, right? I think that the midfield is a next summer problem, maybe a January problem, something like that. Someone to fill in for. I believe Kobe Manu is injured now, so they will need someone either in January or the summer. But as for last summer, all throughout last season, the attack was, killing them, killing them. At the start of this season as well, United were one of the worst defenders for underperforming on their XG. Ruben Amorim's tactics were leading to opportunities, but they just weren't taking them. So addressing their 2 biggest problem areas, maybe overpaid, but that's the market right now. Good work for them. All right. Good work for Manchester United. Mountain said, if you watch the game, you see that Arsenal doesn't use Gyökeres. Yeah, I think that they've just been so used to a different way of playing under Arteta, where they haven't really had like a real striker there for a while. They've had like a Havertz type striker. They've built up a lot of their attack down the flanks instead, not really going centrally as often as perhaps someone like Gyökeres would like, right? So it's definitely an adjustment process, not even for just him, but for his teammates as well, to sort of change how they play a little bit. So that's something to keep an eye on. Mountain said, yeah, not getting enough chances to score. Agreed, agreed. Who says Man United can't be an A with how badly they neglected their midfield, which is still their weakest point? Yeah, I mean, I do disagree with you there. I don't think that their midfield is their absolute weakest point when everyone is available. I think that Ugarte still has an opportunity to get a lot better. That's for sure. He hasn't really showed out. Casemiro, every time people write him off, he comes up with a big performance and looks good again. Bruno Fernandes is playing a lot better in that sort of deeper role now. So things are starting to click there. If you ask me in the summer, I totally agree with you. But this regrading, so far so good. In my opinion. But I think that, as I said, January, next summer, got to address that midfield. Let's move on to Manchester City. Now, their previous grade was a B minus, and they brought in a few signings. The biggest for me was Donnarumma, but they also brought in Aitnori, Ryan Cherki, Tijani Reinders, James Trafford. They actually brought in three keepers, Trafford, Donnarumma, and Bettinelli as well. Now, the Donnarumma signing, I question personally, only because of the change in build-up that would happen with Manchester City, the change in style. Ederson and his distribution was so integral to how Pep Guardiola plays football. Pep Guardiola himself even said that a keeper has to do much more than just save. They have to play football. Big change with Donnarumma. Not as good with the ball at his feet, but a way, 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 way better shot stopper. Now, they didn't bring in a center back, which I thought was a huge mistake in my opinion. Reason being is that I find that their center backs have been a bit burnt out looking lately. Ruben Dias isn't what he used to be at Manchester City. John Stones, good, but you can expect him to pick up an injury, unfortunately. I think that a signing in center back position would have been a really good idea. But with the defense failing, they at least have Donnarumma to bail them out now. And then in a way that Ederson couldn't really. So I understand the vision of wanting to bring in Donnarumma. Maybe they realized, like, look, we need someone who can bail us out. If our defense is going to fail us a little bit, at least we have that sort of backup plan, right? I think that Tijani Reinders is a good signing. He hasn't quite hit his full stride just yet. He started really well. He faded a little bit. Now it looks like he's starting to figure it out a little bit more. I think that players obviously do take a good season to get used to playing under Guardiola. Aitnori has mostly been injured. Just 266 minutes so far. Struggled to get on the pitch. Not so great thus far. Ryan Cherki, injured. Struggled to get on the pitch as well. But, I mean, he did score recently. I think yesterday he did score. So I think he will be a good signing for them alongside Reinders. But I'm keeping their grade at a B minus because their root issue in defense hasn't been addressed, in my opinion. And they're also looking like a one-man team out there. Haaland, top scorer. Then I think own goal is the next top scorer for them in the Premier League, so that's a bit of a worry. I guess the thinking could be that maybe Ryan Cherki could start providing more value in the attack. We'll see. We'll see. With him just returning, we'll see. He certainly has the skill to do so. Will he adapt? Will he start firing? So I leave them at a B minus for now. Got to sort out that defense. They really do. Chronicle says, besides some early injuries, most of the signings are showing great early potential, and Gianluigi and James Trafford feels like a solid pairing of keepers, reminiscent of the Ederson-Ortega pairing. Yes, that was a good pairing. I know Trafford had a bit of a sketchy, I think it was his debut, that he didn't look great, but then he started to look a little bit better after. Donnarumma now, one of the best shot stoppers you could ever ask for. Someone who fills the defense with confidence, which is a huge part in your defense's operations, you know? I always look back to when Liverpool brought in Alisson and how much that changed their defense. Anyway, also Nico and successor for Rodri is going to be one to watch, says Chronicle. Yeah, I mean, I didn't mention him because he was a January signing, but that signing from Porto, we'll see. We'll see how he adapts. He didn't really impress me that much in the in the second half of last season, but we'll see. This is the full season now. So let's move on to Chelsea. Now, Chelsea, their previous grade was an A minus. Not a huge drop from me, but they do drop to B. For me, a B is yeah, it's been fine kind of thing. That's what a B is. Estevão for me has been their top signing, the best signing for them so far. This, in my opinion, fantastic showing from the young Brazilian there. Jamie Gittins and João Pedro have had sort of differing fortunes. They're moving in opposite directions there. JP, João Pedro, started well, but has gone ice cold lately. And I mean that in a bad way, not in like a cold Palmer way. He's gone like really off. Gittins started absolutely ice cold, also in the bad way, but has 3 assists and a goal in his last 3 matches. Granted, against poor opposition in Wolves and Ajax, the worst team in the Premier League, or are Wolves still the worst team in the Premier League? I think so. And the worst team in the Champions League. But you got to start somewhere, right? You got to still score the goals. You got to still get the assists. He's someone who I didn't really rate as a signing. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. Hopefully he does. There are a lot of signings to get through with Chelsea, man. It's crazy. Liam Delap barely made a splash as he's been injured and then got himself stupidly sent off against Wolves yesterday. 118 minutes. Nothing have come of it. Alejandro Garnacho scored recently, has had moments here and there, but nothing mind-blowing. Dario Asugo out with an injury. A lot of these guys are kind of depth signings. They haven't fully popped off yet. Numbers wise, Juan Pedro leads them. But as we said, he's been quiet for over a month now. He hasn't scored since August. So Estevão, probably the best. The rest, that's why I just give them a B as like it's just fine. It's not great. They're solid backups, but they don't really elevate the level of Chelsea, in my opinion. You know, a lot of them haven't really done enough to take starting spots under Enzo Maresca. But with their philosophy of buying young, inexperienced players, they don't provide that here and now guarantee that more established signings would, right? So it's harder to judge which direction they will go in. But right now, it's just sort of like, yeah, it's fine. They're good backups. You have Malo Gusto playing in the midfield instead of some of the midfielders. So that's interesting. But yeah, B. B for me. B for me. Now, we're going to leave England. We're going to take a little Spanish holiday here. And we are going to go to Barcelona, which sounds fantastic as it's pouring rain where I am. Barcelona is one of those teams that's absolutely linked with everyone, and they got a C plus previously, and they should have done much more work this summer. They didn't, and so they're going to get a C plus still. I think they're stuck at C plus. I've maintained that grade because the biggest issue with Barcelona is how they didn't bring in a center back for me. You're seeing how complicated life has been for Barcelona since Inigo Martinez left. Barcelona's back line has suffered some more at times. But who did they bring in? They brought in this man, Marcus Rashford. They brought in John Garcia. John Garcia has been a great signing. Rooney Bargi hasn't done much for them, but Marcus Rashford, fantastic. Scoring, assisting, putting up numbers in Barcelona's attack, looking right at home. Great numbers as well. I mean, I think a lot of people haven't really, or maybe haven't paid attention to how well he's doing. 5 goals and 7 assists across all competitions. That's, 12 contributions in 13 matches. In La Liga, 1 goal, 5 assists. That's not bad at all. So Marcus Rashford doing very well for them. John Garcia was doing well for them before he tore his meniscus. So it's hard to see Barcelona getting much higher than a C plus, right? Like I said, Rooney Bargi hasn't done much. So Rashford, a good signing, but those defensive issues are looking like they simply will not go away. And it does make you wonder, why wasn't there a focus on bringing in a center back when Inigo was leaving? I mean, faith in Araujo has been sort of eroded away. Christensen as well. And both guys do tend to pick up their share of injuries. So not addressing that area of the pitch could cost them this season. Now, getting Rafinha back will help because the press and their defense starts with that sort of press at the front, right? But the back line, I think it will cost them dearly this season. That Rashford loan, while he has been good, maybe those funds should have been put towards a defender. That's probably what I would have gone to. El Wandel on YouTube says, I think Chelsea would be better with a back 3. Yeah, just to give more, I mean, they have sort of played around with that now and then under Maresca, not consistently. You know, it's interesting that you say that because you see a lot of teams that are much more dynamic with their shapes these days. For example, I was looking at Spalletti going to Juve and I was thinking, oh, this is a guy who only plays a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. Guys played everything. And you're seeing a lot of managers doing that now. Chelsea, they are a team that is very hard to analyze, El Wandel. I find it very difficult to call how they're going to play because as soon as you see them going on a losing streak, all of a sudden they go on a winning streak. They're just all over the place. They're a little bit erratic, but I guess it's working for them. They won the Club World Cup, they won the Conference League. We'll see. We'll see. I think that they could do something this season as well. Now, guys, let's move on to our final team. We have Real Madrid, and they got a B minus last time. I've upgraded them to an A minus. Now, the big reason for this is because of how good their new signings have been. A lot of them have been hits. They haven't made many of them, but they've been hits for the most part. Three of them, Mastantuono, Hausen, and Carreras, have been integral to Xabi. They have been super important to the success that the team has had so far. The one guy who hasn't provided much value is Trent, who got injured quick, right? Which is a worry. He had injuries, a lot of injuries, injury issues last season as well with Liverpool. Same injury also, that hamstring, his hamstrings, little elastic bands, they're snapping on him. Now, Trent is back now. And great timing as well because Carvajal is out. So Real Madrid aren't allowed to have two right backs healthy at the same time, it seems. It seems like that's the new rule in this sport, just like there has to be a red card in every single Chelsea match. So the new thing is that Real Madrid cannot have two starting fullbacks healthy at the same time. However, as things stand, Trent hasn't done enough when he wasn't injured. The best ability is availability, so it's hard to sort of judge him and give him a positive mark so far. Now, Carreras over on the left, he had a shaky match here and there for sure. It hasn't all been perfect, but for the most part, he's absolutely been an upgrade on what Real Madrid had last season with Mendy and Fran Garcia. He's been able to recover well when he makes a mistake. He can link the attack as well. He can handle big opposition as well as he did with Lamine Yamal for the most part during El Clasico. He was dreadful against Atletico Madrid. No hiding from that. The rest of his teammates were as well, but Hausen, sorry. I mean, yes, has had some moments where there has been some naivety. I always mess that up, but overall, he has been great for them in area of the pitch that was always kind of hanging on by a thread last season with the injuries they were picking up. Chouameni having to fill in there now and then. You want him in the midfield and he's having to fill in at center back. That's not good. That causes sort of a cascading effect of issues on your team. And it's not like they're out of the woods this season. Both Rudiger and Alaba injured as well. Now, of course, Mastantuono, he has been important to Real Madrid and how they press, as he has been tireless with his work ethic. That right flank is highly competitive as well. So you have guys like Brahim Diaz and Rodrigo who can play there, but Mastantuono has been great in that regard. Showed his lack of experience at times when it comes to his decision making in front of goal, his effectiveness in front of goal. Only has that one goal and assist, but other than that, pretty good. So the performance of the 3 out of the 4 has been really good for Real Madrid. All of them regular starters under Xabi, which is a great sign. And we'll see with Trent. But as of now, I think that's been a very successful window for Real Madrid, who are the last team that we covered here. So let's go over our list once again. We started out with Liverpool getting a C plus, and Ekitike's back must be sore for how he is carried them to a C plus. Otherwise, we're talking C, C minus, not good. Arsenal, A plus, fantastic squad to begin with. And they added depth so that you don't have to rely on a Trossard or a Martinelli to start anymore. Now you could have a Berici Eze, you could have a Victor Gyökeres, etc. So that team has done, as well as in the midfield, bringing in like a Zubamendi, Mosquera, Hincapié. They brought in all these depth signings, all these, and some of them being starters as well. Fantastic job by Arsenal. Manchester United, I elevated them to an A minus because they addressed two big problem areas for them, which was the attack, where they were underperforming on their XG a ton, as well as the goalkeeping position. Because once you get confidence in your center backs from having a good goalkeeper, that changes a lot. That really does change a lot. And you can see how the rest of the team is playing super well. Man City, sticking with a B minus. They have brought in Donnarumma, who's been a great signing. Reinders, solid so far. We'll say solid. Cherki, looks like he'll be solid as well. And then also James Trafford. They brought in a bunch of guys. Ait Nori, injured, a few injuries there. Donnarumma has been fantastic, though. So we'll just keep it status quo. B minus for them. Chelsea, down to a B. Because a lot of the guys, as I was saying earlier, a lot of the guys that they brought in are guys who haven't really been able to wrestle a starting position away from anyone. Good, sort of depth signings. We're seeing Gittins starting to play a little bit better. João Pedro has gone cold, however. Garnacho, hey, it's been kind of mixed. So it's been a lot of that. It's been a lot of mixed for Chelsea. So B, which is just fine for them this past window. Barca, C+, definitely needed to address the back line. Really, really needed to do so. John Garcia, unfortunately injured, but he was a good signing prior to that. Rooney Bargi, haven't really seen much of him. Not a lot to say about Rooney Bargi. Marcus Rashford, very good, but I do think that they're going to get punished for not bringing in a good available center back, someone who is just not injured and who can actually lead that back line well along Pau Cubarsí. And finally, Real Madrid, they get an A minus. 3 out of their 4 signings have been integral to their success so far. Carreras, Howson, and Massantuono. Trent got injured. We'll see. So they got an A minus, doing fantastic so far. We'll see what Trent can do. He has a lot to prove. All right, guys, that's it. Midterms complete. Back to the school stuff. Sorry, I brought it back. Arsenal, the big winners on the day. Barcelona, Liverpool, not so good. But Arsenal, look, making a claim for being the best team in Europe right now, especially with that squad depth. We'll see what Bayern and PSG have to say about that, who actually play each other next week. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you for tuning in once again. Thank you so much to everyone who is dropping their comment in the chat. It is always appreciated. I love hearing from you guys. I love when you guys push back against me. I am Adrian. This is Bleacher Report, and I will see you in another one soon. Later, guys.